You are now listening to Testimonies with Terry.
All right, everyone. Well, I am here with Becca Rudlong. Becca, I am super excited for this. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is totally Holy Spirit led, Becca, because it was about a year ago now. And I remember it was a year ago because, well, I'll get to it in the story. But I was on Facebook, and you know how it has that section that says people you may know or whatever. And your picture came up, Becca, and I think you had your last name was like Glory at the time. I'm just like, she looks familiar. And man, Becca, I tell you, like the Holy Spirit just put like something into me where it's just like, you need to like be praying for her. Like you need to reach out and you need to be praying for her. And like I said, I've never met you. I think I've maybe seen you in passing at church, but Holy Spirit laid it so thick on my heart that, hey, I'm supposed to be praying for you. I'm supposed to reach out to you. And so at Friendsgiving last year, that's why I know it was a year ago.
Yeah.
I talked to Emily Conrad, who knows everybody at church. And I just asked her like, hey, Emily, do you know Becca? And she was just like, yeah. And she went in and, started telling me the whole story of how her and her husband, Ted, were really kind of, just helping you out and praying for you at that time. And I think she gave me your number. And so I just kind of texted you. And over the last year now, we've kind of just texted back and forth. Anytime that the Lord has kind of given me a word for you. And we actually just met in person a week ago when I gave you some equipment to use here. Yeah. And so it's just so cool how the Lord has kind of been building this friendship and how it's led to this moment now where I get to hear your story because again, folks, you guys who are listening to this and watching this, we're pretty much just kind of meeting. I mean, we had, like I said, a quick little meetup last week, but I really don't know much about your life, about your story. And that's why I'm so excited to chat with you, Becca, because I know God is all over this. He's all over your story. And man, this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Well, let's get into it, Becca. We always start way at the beginning. So tell us a little bit about where did you grow up and what was family life like for you?
Yeah, so I grew up southeast Minnesota, down by Rochester area, raised in a Christian home, really strong Christian parents, big family. So I have 10 siblings.
Oh, wow.
I'm 7, so so I'm 7th out of 11. And it was fun. It was, with big families though come big problems and big blessings and, all of that. But it was good. Like when I look back to, the foundation stuff that I had growing up, it's pretty amazing to see how the foundation that my parents laid for me has really helped me these past couple years especially, but just as an adult, like I feel like they set me up for success in that area as far as character or morals. We would read the Bible every day. We would pray every day. We knew all the church songs and it was a part of our life every single day. So
wow, what a blessing.
Yeah, grew up on a farm. Yep. So farm girl, I guess. So yeah, it was a wild childhood.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of dig into that a little bit more. What kind of farm did you guys grow up on?
Originally it was a dairy farm. And then I was pretty young. I think I was about 6 or 7. I think probably one of my siblings will watch this and they'll tell me, or my parents. But I think I was about 6 or 7, and that's when my dad decided to sell the dairy farm. And then we just kind of did a hobby farm, and then just farmed a whole bunch of land, so like corn, beans, all that type of stuff. So just mostly after the dairy farm, just raising beef, cows, and stuff like that. We had some horses, dogs, chickens, cats, all the works. So
all the animals, right? And so I'm imagining that a pretty strong work ethic was instilled into you from a young age, growing up on a farm.
Oh yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. I vowed that when I was an adult, I would never own an animal because like when you have to go outside and do chores and it's freezing and, it was amazing. Like I said, though, like I never wanted to, but looking back at it, like I guess the one thing that I think is funny is my parents would always be like, it builds character. It builds character. And I can see that. Like, you're right, mom and dad. Like, it did. But at the time, it was not fun. Not fun. So yeah, we did a lot of chores and it was hard work, but it was good. It was good work.
Yeah, no, there's something
Mm-hmm.
about, and I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up helping out on some family members' farms. And yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but there's something about like once you're done with the day, like you feel good, like, hey, like I
Yeah.
did something
Yep.
today, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. You are the seventh out of 11. My mind just can't
Yeah.
even wrap around having that many siblings. What, and working as a marriage and family therapist, I'm all into like birth order. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
7 out of 11, I don't even know like how to classify that because, you're not obviously
Well,
the oldest,
seven's
you're
a
not the
heavenly number,
youngest.
so like,
Right.
just
There you
kidding.
go. There you go. So that's how we
Yep,
define it. That's how we define
there
it.
it
It's
is.
it's it's the
Yep.
heavenly
Mm-hmm.
position, right? What
Yes.
was
Yep.
what was that like though? Because again, like birth order stuff, like you're not like
Mm-hmm.
really a middle child. You're kind of in the like last quarter of the
Right.
kids there. So what was that like
Yeah.
just being seventh out of 11? I would imagine, obviously, you got older siblings ahead of you. Did they serve as like
Mm-hmm.
additional mom and dad figures in your life too? Or what was
Oh
that
yeah.
like being number
Mm-hmm.
7?
Yeah. Well, I definitely wasn't a guinea pig at that point. So like, I watched a lot of my older siblings, make certain mistakes, and then I'm sure I made some of the same ones and stuff, but I think a lot of what I saw, like I actually like I really saw it, like this is good, that's bad, or like do this, don't do that, that sort of thing. And like I said, I made all my own mistakes, even having them to kind of watch and stuff. Um, but yeah, like my siblings were my best friends, and still to this day, like my sisters and stuff. Like I would rather hang out with my sisters than any of my other friends. We've always been super close. We would all wear the same, we were all the same size, and so we just trade clothes all the time or steal each other's clothes. We had a really good relationship, and I would say that we still did. We obviously, when you're little and stuff, you go through those stages of just constant fighting and picking on each other and stuff like that. But um, it's pretty cool to see, like, even though we don't talk all the time or we don't see each other very often, um, like we just pick up right where we left off all the time. And so it's pretty cool just to see that.
Yeah, no, I mean there's 11 of you, so I'm guessing at this stage in
Mm-hmm.
life, like are you guys pretty well spread out?
For the most part, I have a sister who lives about an hour away, and then everybody else is around that Rochester area, for the most part. So, yep. So a lot of them stayed local. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm kind of the odd one out, like as far as like I moved away and stayed away kind of thing, versus like traveling and going back, or just kind of staying in the area. But
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
So, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you definitely weren't the guinea pig. You saw some of the mistakes that your older brothers and sisters got into. So, what was your role as a kid? Like, were you like the good kid, or like how would you describe kind of your role in the family?
um, I guess I haven't ever thought about it like that, but I don't think I was the bad kid. um, I definitely, like I said, made my own mistakes and everything. Um, but I would say I was pretty well balanced. Um, I kind of knew what to do and what not to do. Um, Not saying that like my older siblings made all the bad choices or anything like that, but like I said, I had them as examples to kind of watch and stuff. So I think I just kind of fell in line, like not like I was just another kid, but like when you have 11 kids, like at the seventh one, like everybody has chores. And so every night, like do you want to wash the dishes or dry the dishes? Do you want to sweep the floor? Or, that sort of thing. Like we all just kind of knew what was expected, I guess. We would still fight about it and argue about it and like say no. But yeah, we had I would say kind of a routine as far as that went, like every night, like, and then we would swap chores, if one of us didn't want to wash the dishes, we'd be like, hey, if you wash, I'll dry, or if you do my inside chores, I'll do your outside chores, that sort of thing. So, but no, I mean, I would say I was more of the good kid than a bad kid. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said, just kind of fell in line. I'm
Yep.
curious,
Mm-hmm.
with a family that big, did you ever feel like you had to fight for time or attention from either mom or dad?
No, but I also didn't really realize that I wasn't getting time because that's just how life was. When I look back at it now, I can see that the only time we did like one-on-one time with our parents was on our birthday. And then we got to pick a restaurant. And my parents would take us each like on our own out, for like a really nice meal wherever we wanted to go. So looking back at it, that's honestly the only one-on-one time that I can remember from my entire like childhood. But like I said at the time, like that was just life, and I guess I've never really thought about it till I was an adult, and especially having my own children. I mean, my parents are saints. Like I do not know how they did it. Like, I mean, I have 3 kids, and like, man, half the time I'm ready to ship them off. So like, I don't know how they did 11 kids.
Shout out to mom and
But
dad,
yeah,
because that's a lot.
Yes, yep, yeah. I ask my mom all the time, like, how did you do it? And I used to think it was so annoying, but she would always say, just one day at a time, one day at a time. So like growing up, she would even say that to me, like, no matter what it was, like school, work, like anything like that, relationship stuff, just one day at a time. And she really ingrained that. And like I said, when I was in high school, like, okay, whatever, mom, that sort of thing. And like, I say that all the time now, where it's just like one day at a time, one day at a time. It's like, she was right again, like one day at a time. Yeah. So, yep. But yeah, I mean, the one-on-one time, like we had siblings, we had enough for our own sports teams, basically. Like we were always playing together. We were always together. We were never alone, but we never had that, I would say, that deeper connection with our parents because there were so many of us, but we also hate each other.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think you brought up a good point where you didn't know any better than that, because
Yeah.
that's all that you were used to, right? And so, yeah, now,
Mm-hmm.
the benefit of hindsight being 2020, you can look back and be like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I only had that one-on-one time, but
Yeah.
it's awesome that you did have such a big and supportive family that, like you said, you never felt alone, you never were alone, and
Mm-hmm. Right.
obviously very well loved,
Yeah.
throughout
Oh
your
yeah.
upbringing,
Very.
and even to this
Mm-hmm.
day. Um, with growing up, in a Christian home, that many siblings, were you homeschooled, Becca, or did you go to public school?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. We were homeschooled.
Okay, what was
Yeah.
that like for you?
Yep. Um, well, again, I didn't know any different. That's just what we did. We had friends that would be public school, or like cousins and stuff that would sometimes like make fun of us, but we just kind of learned to like beat them to the punch, like that sort of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, we're homeschooled, but looking back at it, um, it was good. I never took school very seriously growing up. It felt like it, I don't think any kid looks forward to school, but doing it at home, I think, was um, probably just a lot different because we would just like stay in our jammies. We would do school on the couch. We'd fall asleep, and then we'd get in trouble, like that sort of thing. So it was really relaxed. But like I said, my parents, we did this curriculum that like, it really like drew in like biblical teaching and like prayer and stuff like that. And so every day, every morning, like how we would start our day is we would start out, we would read one proverb and we would read one psalm, and then we would all take turns praying. And I remember really early on, we would all just like say the same generic prayer, all of us kids, so we go around and just like, the same thing. And my mom, she actually figured out how to like get us to like think about prayer more and to like implement it in a different way and not just say like, thanks for the day, keep us safe, amen, like that thing, and so she would have like categories basically. And so we would each pick a category. So like friends and family, that would be one category. Like widows and orphans, that would be another category. The sick, that was, and so like we would each, and then we'd figure out which category was the easiest to pray for. And then we'd be like, oh, I want this one. But it's kind of cool looking back at it, how when I think about being homeschooled, that's the part that I remember. I don't remember a lot about the actual like math. I hated math, like
Same.
I cried a lot during math. Yeah, I hated math. Yep. I remember even like, this is bad. Again, though, this is a mistake, right? But we would have these books that were like, they had like the perforated edges and stuff. And I'd go to the back of the book and I would rip pages out so that I would finish the book sooner. And so like, I hated math, hated it. Not proud of that at all. But my mom knows, or she does now anyway. But yeah, like when I think about being homeschooled though, that's the part that I remember. Like I remember my parents being they cared so much that we knew Jesus and that he was always there for us. Like they just, like that's what they instilled in us, and then along with that though, like it was all the character qualities and stuff too. And we studied every character quality, and so like each day or each week we would have, we would talk about like loyalty or, something like that, whatever it would be, patience. We would spend like 1 week and we would read, the way it worked is you would like incorporate like an animal that showed patience or, you know what I mean? Like, and then you learn about that animal or like just different things. And so looking back though, like I don't remember any of the actual like school part of it. I just, I've just read Proverbs hundreds of times, and I've read the Psalms hundreds of times, and it's like, so it's like my foundation is just, I would say Psalms and Proverbs, you know what I mean? Like they just really, they wanted us to know who God was. So yeah.
That's awesome, and what a way to build that foundation, right? Like to,
absolutely, yeah.
To have your foundation literally be the rock, Jesus and his word.
Yep.
There is no better foundation than that. And Becca, for you, I mean, you grew up always knowing the Lord from what it sounds like, being raised in a Christian household. Was there any point in your childhood or maybe teenage years where you felt like, okay, like I'm accepting Jesus as my own personal savior instead of kind of just living off the faith of the family? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that I understood it when I was young. I think it was like 8 or 9 when I really understood it. But it's funny though, because like the age 16 always comes to mind when I think about this, because that was like my faith took like a way deeper dive, I would say. And I knew I was saved before that. And I knew who God was, and I knew all the answers and everything. But I would say about age 16 is when I really like understood like who God was, what he did, and what my role was,
Was there something that happened around age 16 that caused you to kind of dig deeper into your faith like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to my family. We were going to a church from back home, and there was a group that would go out and just kind of like witness to people, so they just go to different places, like they go to the mall or things like that. And they would just like talk to people, and stuff. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm never doing that. Like that's so embarrassing. Like I don't even talk to people like that, like that sort of thing. But I tried it a couple times and it just was like eye opening though to have all the different experiences, I guess, of like somebody who's very willing to listen to you and then someone who is like just walks away, just turns around, walks away from you. People that get mad at you. And it was just like eye opening to see how many different reactions there are to people like hearing about Jesus and stuff like that. But I just remember it wasn't ever like a certain experience or anything during that time, but it was like my understanding of who Jesus was just grew so much because I was trying to show these other people that like, hey, this is something you want, you know. So yeah, I would say at the age 16. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about going out and witnessing to people like that, I mean, like you said, you run into all sorts of people and all sorts of different reactions as you just explained
Mm-hmm.
there. What what do you think that you learned from that? What do you think that did for you having that experience of, at a pretty young age, 16? I mean, like you said, you dealt with
Mm-hmm.
rejection. You dealt with people that got angry at you for talking about faith. And then you obviously had the positive experiences too. What did you take from that?
Yeah. Um, honestly, I I don't know how else to say it, but I learned that that's how I will never share Jesus with people again, if that makes sense. Like it just was not in my mind, I guess it was just not an effective way. And maybe it's just like the world that we live in now or something, but like for me, I can be honest and say that like since that time in my life, I've never just gone up to somebody and been like, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" or "Hey, I have something to share with you. Will you listen?" Like I have never done that since that time. And so it is kind of crazy to think about how that time was such an impactful, time of my life, and those experiences and stuff. But for me, I knew that that is not how I was supposed to do things, and I would say that I learned that fairly quickly during that time. I just, I meant to share Jesus a different way, and yeah.
Yeah. So how
Yeah.
how would you say is the way that you typically share Jesus with people?
Mhm. I would say just by the way, I don't know how to say this without sounding like really arrogant or something, but just by how I live my life. Like I I don't know. I just I don't tell people it's like, oh, I'm a Christian. I don't tell people that. Like I want them to see it, and I think that's just um I think when you're so grounded in like Jesus and stuff, like it just becomes a way. And like I said, I make mistakes, like all this stuff. I'm not trying to sound arrogant here. Um but I've had people, especially the last couple of years, just say like, I don't know how you're always so happy, or just like different things like that. And it's stuff like that though where it's like Jesus, and that's my, like that's where I get in there, and they already see it and they've seen it, and so for me to like share Jesus with them at that time, they're like 100% ready to listen because they've they've already seen it, if that makes sense. um so yeah, I would say like it was just, for me it was just a big wake up call to be like, okay, like if you want to share Jesus with other people by the way that you live your life, like you really need to like be intentional about how you live your life.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good word. That's a
and
good
I
word
failed
right
at it
there.
many, many times, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we all
yeah.
have, right? I mean, none of us are
Hmm.
perfect, like you said, and you're definitely not arrogant for showing Jesus in that way. Like,
Hmm.
what I heard you say, Becca, is that you love Jesus so much that it really impacts every decision, everything that you do, and that's what you want
Hmm.
people to see is, hey, like I
Yeah.
I live my life, I make decisions based out of my love for the Lord, and that's how I
Yes.
can show people who Jesus is. And like
Hmm.
you said, it opens up a natural door there when people take notice of that and they're just like, how can you be so happy, as you're going through hell,
Yeah.
or why
Yeah.
do you always seem to be so joyful? And like you said, that's just like open door right there. Let's talk about
Yes.
Jesus.
Yep.
And
That's it.
we all have been equipped with different gifts. I'm much like you. I'm not the kind of person that's just going to come up to someone and say, "Hey, can I tell you about Jesus?" I'd rather just get to know the person first, and
Yeah.
kind of slide it in there somewhere in the conversation. So we all have different giftings. God has called us to share him in different ways. What matters is that we're obedient in showing him the way that he's called us to. And it sounds like you definitely do that, Becca. And thanks for sharing that, because I think that'll really resonate
Yeah.
with a lot of people there.
Yeah.
Backing up to your time in school. So were you homeschooled all the way through graduation? I know some homeschoolers, they'll go to like a public high school for their high school years. What did you do?
Yep. All the way through graduation. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so when you
Yeah.
graduated, did you have any idea what you wanted to do after graduation?
No. 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 And I'm still paying student loans from that, having no idea. So
Yeah.
no. Nope.
So what did you end up doing then?
Right out of high school, I actually went to college. And I just got a 2-year degree, just an associate's, like an AA degree from a college, and didn't really do anything with it. It just kind of, I mean, eventually, like, it kind of paid off to have that. But, like, at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was like, well, if college is 4 years and you have to do these 2 years no matter what, then I'll just get started on the 2 years. And then hopefully by that time I can figure it out. And I didn't.
Yeah, that's very common, right? Very common.
It is.
And so here you are, and going to college. And did you like move away to go to college for those 2 years for your generals, or did you stick close to home, or what did you do there?
I stayed close to home. Yep, I had a lot of friends that went to that college and stuff, and so it was a small Christian college. And I like I said, I didn't know what to do, and it was like, well, this seems like a safe option. So, yep. So it was close to home. I never lived on campus. I just commuted and stuff. So, yeah.
Yep. I'm in the same boat as you. Any way to save money during that
Yep.
time, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So then 2 years pass, you get this AA degree, and you're still not really sure what the heck you're supposed to do in life. So then what did you do?
Well, so I started working during that time. I started working at a grocery store. And I had a lot of different jobs. Like, I honestly don't even think that I could name all the jobs that I had. Like, I've had so many different jobs. I've done everything. But I worked at a grocery store. Yeah, and I think that kind of led into like what I ended up actually like doing, like finding my calling for. But I just remember it was in the winter time, and uh, it was snowy, and there was a puddle of melted snow on the floor at this grocery store. And this lady came in, and she slipped, and she fell, and she hit her head. And there was just like blood everywhere. She started having a seizure, and I just stood there, and I was like, what do I do? Like, I had no idea what to do. And so I ran and grabbed paper towels, because I was like, well, we got to clean this up. Like, we got to stop this. Like, but I had no idea what to do. And I felt so helpless. And when I think back to it, it was like in that moment that I knew I wanted to do something like in healthcare or taking care of people and stuff. And I've always been fascinated by like medical stuff. But like, it was in that moment where I was like, okay, I know. So, yeah.
and so did you, how long after your AA degree did you start pursuing your career in the medical field?
I think it was almost right away. I think because I graduated my AA in May, and then I'm pretty sure. Gosh, I think it was for sure within the next year that I started working at a hospital then as like a nursing assistant. So I did my like CNA, PCA course and stuff. But gosh, when I think back to it, I mean, I'm pretty old now, but I honestly don't I don't remember how long in between, because I started working at a hospital in December. And so maybe it was still that same year. I don't think it was, though. I think it was maybe a year after. I think I worked really hard for a year because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I think it was that next year that I did all my, started doing my nursing classes and stuff.
Yeah. And so you started working at a hospital, and like you said, you did your nursing classes. And were you able to stick around home or at that same college to do your nursing degree?
Yep. So I worked at the Mayo Clinic down in Rochester, because when you're from that area, that's just what everybody does. Mother Mayo, like everybody, that's what we do. So I started working there, and then I knew I wanted to keep going, for my RN and stuff. So then I just started doing prerequisites, not like full time and really aggressively, but just kind of taking my time. And there's a lot of community colleges and stuff around there. And so I just went to a community college to do some prereqs and kept working, and yeah.
And here you are still working as a nurse all these years later, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
What is
So
it that you love?
10 years now.
Wow, 10 years.
Yeah,
That's
I'm pretty
amazing.
Sure. Yeah. With a little break in between, but yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. What is it about nursing that you just feel like, hey, this, like I'm in my niche here. Like I really feel like I'm doing what God has called me to do.
I would say just overall, like to really summarize it, just helping people. If I had to just give you a really quick answer, it was to help people. But I'm very fascinated, by the medical field. Like there's just, you will never know everything about medicine or like the human body, or you know what I mean? Just there's so much to learn. Like my coworkers tell me all the time I have to stop doing this, but I still tell them I'm a baby nurse. It's like I'm still a baby nurse. Like I don't know this stuff, and because there's just so much to learn, and it's so fascinating, and every patient is different, and so I love it. I love it. You can work in so many different units, departments. You can have so many different roles. Like you don't have to do bedside. There's just so many different things you could do. It's like the options are just endless. You could just, if you get sick of one thing, you can try this other thing, and it's just fun. Like I like talking to people. I like hearing people's stories. Like I said, I like helping people. And so for me, like bedside nursing, I love bedside. I don't see myself ever leaving bedside if I don't have to. So
yeah, that's awesome. It's so cool to just kind of hear your journey of not knowing what you wanted to do to now like loving what you do and really feeling like you found the right fit. So praise God for that.
Yeah.
So then, Becca, here you are, you're graduated, you got your big girl job, working at the Mayo and just living your life, doing your thing. What's kind of the next chapter of your story here?
Yeah. So I would say the next chapter is probably meeting my now ex-husband. So it was kind of when I was working and pursuing a nursing degree. So when I started at Mayo, I hadn't graduated with my RN yet. So I was a nursing assistant. And then I met my husband or ex-husband in 2014 is when we met.
How did you guys meet?
We met at a bar. I mean, works for some people. We met at a bar, and it was just one of those crazy stories that it was like, oh wow, this is so cool. Like it's definitely meant to be, and but yeah, we met at a bar.
Okay. And did you guys just kind of hit it off right away, start dating, or what was that process like of building the relationship?
Yeah. I think if you had asked me like at that time, my answer would be so different than it is now. But because it's now, I'm just going to go with now, and I'm going to answer questions from now. So I would say we definitely hit it off right away. There was just something about him that I was really drawn to. He was really charismatic. I was just drawn to him, And so I would say that it just kind of, I was definitely blinded by love, or whatever word you would want to use there, right away in the beginning. Um, and yeah, I was like, this person is perfect. Like, I'm going to marry him. And I kind of just fell head over heels for this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what was kind of the formation of the relationship like, as far as, how long did you guys date until he popped the question?
Mm-hmm. I think we only dated for 7 months, 7 or 8 months before he asked. And at that time, I was like actually like bugging him, like, "Are you gonna ask? Like, are we gonna do this? That sort of thing." So I think I was probably actually pressuring him more than he realized. Maybe he did realize it, but looking back, I just remember like, wow, I was kind of pushy. But so yeah, about
You're a
seven
woman who knew
months
what she
we
wanted.
dated. Yep, I did. Yep. Yeah.
And so
hmm
he eventually proposes, you say yes.
hmm
How long was the engagement period for you guys?
Yeah, that was just over a year. So 13 months, I think, almost exactly. So we waited a while just because I had a sister who was overseas and she couldn't come home before then. And so she was like my closest sister, basically. And so she was my maid of honor. And so we waited till she was able to come back for it. So,
Gotcha. What
yeah.
was your wedding like? I think most little girls, dream about their wedding, and they kind of plan out what they want it to look like. And so for you, your wedding day, Becca, at that time, was it everything that you wanted?
No. Like, it's pretty wild. So I had an emergency appendectomy. So I had my appendix taken out like 48 hours before our wedding.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, yep. And in my mind, so like I said at the time, um, it was like, okay, the enemy doesn't want this. He knows that we're going to do big things, like that sort of thing. Where in my mind, I was just like, this isn't a red flag. And like I said, I was just, this isn't a red flag. Like, and I was just so like, it's not a red flag. And I had a couple people that were like, is this a red flag? I was like, it's not a red flag. So yeah, so 2 days before the wedding, I was in the hospital. Actually, the day before even. I got released the day before the wedding. Um, and then we had prayed for no rain because it was an outdoor wedding, and it did not rain that day. But it was like 108 degrees outside. it was it was miserable. Like it was so hot. Like we had like the groomsmen coming in and taking their shirts off and throwing them in the dryer and stuff. Like between pictures or whatever. Like it was miserable. Like it was not very fun. It was a hot day. And it's funny because it's like, well, we prayed for no rain, but we never prayed for it to be a good temperature or whatever. So, and I just remember like I was in so much pain from the surgery that I just had and stuff too. And like my dress was really tight, like around my stomach. And I just remember I couldn't really laugh or like, I just, it was kind of miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yep.
you kind of, said this word a couple times, or this phrase, red flag. And
hmm
as you look back at, that whole process of dating to engagement to wedding, again, the benefit of hindsight being 2020, what are maybe some of the other red flags that you can
Yeah.
see now, but like you said, because you were so blinded by love at that time, that you just didn't see?
Yeah. Um, well, there's quite a few of them, but they all kind of tie together. So he had just gotten out of treatment before I met him, or like months prior, had gotten out of treatment. Um, but when I met him, he was living in this little apartment, which was fine. I mean, it's completely fine. Like people are just getting back on their feet. And so for him, um, but um, when I met him, like I had gone to his work a couple weeks after knowing him, And the people, they were like, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. And like, yeah, he just called this morning, said he quit. And so it was like things like that where it was just kind of like, okay, like almost like for me, because like I talked about how like my parents really instilled like integrity and like all that stuff into us. Like in my mind, I was just like, well, he must have had a really good reason, and I would always like go on that side of it. I remember like going to his apartment one time and he had like an eviction letter on his door because he wasn't paying the rent. He didn't have any money, which is fine. Sometimes we just don't have money for different reasons. Um, he lied about having a car. That was one thing. And my sister was with me even then, and she was like, okay, Becca, like, are you sure about this? And I was like, it's fine. Like I know he lied about it, but we talked about it, and he promised he'll never lie again. So just things like that. Drinking, there was a lot of drinking, and like I said, we met at a bar, so like I was every bit a part of that, at that time and stuff. But when I look back to it, like it was a really big red flag. Like he would just like fall off the grid for days, and I wouldn't know where he was. He wouldn't respond to calls or text messages. You know, like I said, I was working in a hospital, so I would work overnights and stuff. And I remember two different times, especially, like I wouldn't hear from him for a couple days, and so I would like drive to his home on my way home, and I would just like check on him or whatever, and he would just be like passed out. And um, I was always like hurt by it, and I would say maybe like annoyed and stuff. But I just, like I said, I was just like drawn to this person, and I was just like, I'm gonna help him, like I'm good for him, like we're gonna like this is good. And but yeah, looking back, like there were a lot of red flags like that, that I just did not see. Like even at one of my bridal showers, his mom kind of pulled me aside, and she was like, Becca, I don't think you understand this, but he's an alcoholic. And I just remember I got so defensive, and I was like, no, he's not. Like, you keep saying this about him, but it's not true. He's not. And I just remember crying and leaving the room at my own bridal shower because I was just so upset that his own mom was saying this about him. And I did not believe it. I was just, no, he's not. You're lying. Like, you don't know him how I know him. His own mother. Like, like that's like how blinded I was, where it was just like she just doesn't know. And like I said, looking back, it's just like I don't know where my head was, I guess. But it was just, it's pretty wild when I look back to see the red flags. And that's why, when I say things like I don't regret anything that I've been through, or like I don't regret getting married and stuff like that. But when I look back, like all the signs were there, that it wasn't going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of answered my question, I think, Becca. I was going to ask, you said a couple of times there that I was just so drawn to him. He had this charisma. There was
Hmm.
just this love for him.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, like, well, what else was there? And it sounds like a big piece of this too was you saw yourself as someone who could help him, as someone who
Hmm.
could maybe bring out the best version of himself. And
Yeah.
obviously you have the heart for that. I mean, you're in the nursing
Hmm.
field. You
Hmm.
have to have that ability to be able to be in the nursing field and to, like you said, for 10 years be in the nursing field to
Yeah.
be successful. You have to have a big heart. You have to want to help people. It sounds like
Hmm.
that was a pretty big component to you feeling the way that you did towards him and defending him against his own mom. To
Hmm.
me, tell me if I'm wrong, but it almost kind of sounds like you saw what he could be, and that was maybe the version of him that you were really in love with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I could agree with that more, for sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so we were talking about the wedding, obviously was not how you dreamed it to be. I don't know of any bride
Hmm.
who, wants to have an appendectomy 2 days before their wedding
Right.
and
Right.
108
Yeah.
degrees, just sweating hot.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so, but the wedding goes on, right? You get
Hmm.
married. And so you guys enter into the honeymoon phase. And I'm curious, Becca, for you, it sounds like you spent maybe up until that time your whole life around your family, or at least close to that area, that
Hmm.
whole Rochester area. When you guys got married, what was that like? Like, was he local to that area, or did you have to move, to where he was? Just kind of talk about that whole honeymoon phase.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, like the actual honeymoon in and of itself, like I cried myself to sleep almost every single night on our honeymoon. Because he would actually like stay up drinking and like watching TV, and I would go to bed. So even that part of it is just like, it was almost like Satan just got in there like right away, like instantly. And when, like I said, when I look back, it's like he was there the whole time, but I just never really saw it. And I just remember like on my honeymoon thinking to myself, like, what did I just do? And like, and then it was too late, because like, well, I'm married, so this is it. Like, here we go. But yeah, so like when I think back to that part of it, it was an immediate thing, like I guess I never thought that I would cry myself to sleep on my honeymoon. But so yeah, so I got married, honeymoon, and then we actually, he has a son, who has a different mom, obviously, who lives in like the St. Cloud area around there. And so for him, he just never really got to see his son very much. And so we decided that we would move closer to him. And so we would leave my family down in Rochester, and then move up here so that he could be closer to his son. And I was 100% supportive. I was like, yep, let's do it. That's the right thing. That's what we should do. So
what was that like for you, leaving family behind and leaving home for the first time in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At first it was like super exciting. I was like, I'm a big girl, I'm married, like I got this guy, he's gonna take good care of me, we're gonna have a great life together, and I kind of went into it with that mindset where it's like, okay, this is gonna be good. Like, it's exciting, we're starting fresh, like we'll make new friends, all the things. Like I was just like really hoping like it's gonna be good, But then I think it really hit me that like, oh my gosh, like my family is 3 hours away, and like they're not anywhere near, and they've always been so close, like they're so far away now. And so like the days where I'd be having a bad day, or if I would need help with something, like this is really silly, but like my sisters would always paint my right hand for fingernails and stuff. Like I never had to paint my right hand because like my left hand, I'm not left-handed. So like my sisters would always paint my nails for me. And like, that was just like one little thing where I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like real. Like they're not around anymore. Like this, it's just me and him. Like, and it was a big shock. It was a big shock. And I don't think I handled it very well. Like when I look back at it, because I think I expected him to be my family, and he was, but I think that going from a family with 11 kids and like parents are like always there and so supportive and just constantly be around people that are your family that just love you, I felt so isolated. So isolated. And I just, like I said, I had no idea. Like I had no idea what I was walking into. I had no idea that I would like feel that way, and just kind of, it hit me pretty hard that it was like I was all alone.
Yeah. I'm curious, did your family ever come to you during that time and discuss any red flags that they might have seen or that they were feeling at all? Or were they also kind of just maybe unaware of some of the things that your ex was doing?
Mm-hmm. I think both. I never told them the bad stuff because I didn't want them to think anything bad. But I do remember like a couple of brothers voicing concerns. But like I said, at that time, like I didn't even believe his own mother. So like, I'm not going to believe my brother, and it was like I had these blinders on and I could not see anything except this person and getting married to him and spending my life with him. And that's like all I could see. So, but yeah, there were definitely people that, in a gentle and loving way, I would say, definitely like voiced concerns.
And not only were you leaving home, for the first time, 3 hours away from your family, like you said, you're a newlywed, but now you're also like an instant stepmom, which is a
Mm-hmm.
pretty big thing too. So what was that like for you, kind of stepping into that stepmom role?
Yeah. Um, I, it was always really easy because I was never like his mom. I was just more of his friend, if that makes sense. I never really had to take on the mom role because he has an amazing mother who has just like raised him so well, and I never felt that responsibility. And granted, we only had him like every other weekend. Um, that was the most consistent it ever was. And then that was hit and miss, like kind of through different seasons and stuff too. But it was good. I mean, like I said, I have so many siblings and stuff, tons of nieces and nephews. For me, it was easy. And like I said, I didn't have to take on that mother role because he did have a mom who was just like his rock. And we were more friends, I would say, at that time.
That's
Hmm.
cool that you were able to distinguish your role so early on, right? I obviously, as a marriage and family
Hmm.
therapist, I work with a lot of blended families, and that's one of the bigger confusions that they tend to deal with is like, I'm stepping into this family and I'm their
Hmm.
step parent, but I don't know what that means. I don't know what I'm supposed to
Yeah.
do. And so for you, it sounds like, just, I'm just going to be this dude's friend, and just be
Hmm.
there for him. Like you said, he's got a mom. He doesn't need a second mom. I'm going to be here
Right.
to just be his friend, be a positive influence in his life, support him. So that's awesome that you were able to find that so quickly.
Hmm.
And so again, here we are in the honeymoon stage of your marriage. You're talking about how, the drinking, every night, he's watching TV, drinking, you're in your bed crying yourself to sleep. Did it get any better, coming out of that honeymoon season, in the months to come, or did things get worse? What did that look like for you, Becca?
Yeah. I wouldn't say they got worse right away. I think, like I said, the excitement of moving and finding a house. There were enough things to kind of like look forward to. I guess like big things that um, I would say I was kind of distracted. And then we probably, I would say for a couple of months, we're pretty settled, like in our new home, that sort of thing, kind of getting in a new routine. But I didn't have a job up there. So like I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. And then he's from this area as well, like the St. Cloud, Cold Spring, that kind of area. And so he had some old friends up here that he reconnected with, and they were all like pool players and stuff. And so he reconnected with these buddies. And so, like, he was gone a lot, and I was at home a lot. And he was like, well, you can come to the bar and watch me play pool. And I was like, I don't want to go watch you play pool. And he's like, well, that's how we met. Like, that, I do that. And I guess, like, in my mind, and that's what I mean, where uh, it was like an instant change where I think I put all this expectation on him to be my whole family and to like be my world, and you can't leave me alone. And like, to like, he was just the person that was supposed to like entertain me all the time, like that sort of thing. I didn't have any friends up here. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a church. Like, I was like alone, like isolated. And so then when he reconnected with these friends and stuff, like I just remember thinking like what is he doing? Like, doesn't he know that I'm sitting here alone? Like, how could we be gone so long and so often? And he's not in a good place, like he shouldn't be doing this. And then I just like found myself just kind of doing this like spiral of like having these expectations, like you need to come home after work, you need to come home to me, and we need to do stuff together. And I think just like really early on, um, I had that feeling of probably I I would probably use the word abandonment. Where like I left my family, I left everything for this person, and then we're in this place that is so unfamiliar to me. Like I couldn't even just like go hang out somewhere, because I don't know the area. Like I was just alone. And then to see that I always had this feeling that he was choosing this other stuff, so like going to play pool, like going to the bar to drink, hanging out with these buddies and stuff. I always felt that he was choosing something over me. And I think I'm sure I became like really bitter really fast towards
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask about that. Just, what toll did that take on your mental health at that time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty rough. Like I just, I was just alone. Like we moved up there. We got married in June. We were all moved in and everything, like, and settled into a home by July. And then, yeah, it was almost right away that he started playing pool, and just like going out and stuff. And, he would get home really late at night. And, so it was almost right away that I just like felt really alone. And then I just really struggled with like, what am I supposed to do? And so then I just started looking for random jobs, like waitressing or clinic work and stuff, even though I knew I didn't, like, I always have loved the hospital, like I knew I wanted to work in a hospital, but I couldn't get a job in a hospital up here with what, it sounds silly, but when I worked at Mayo, they don't make you get certified as a CNA. You can just work there. But places up here, you have to be certified. And so like, even though I came from like Mayo Clinic and stuff, like my education and stuff from there, I couldn't do anything with it up here, and it's crazy because there's like a big God part in all of this and stuff too. In September, so we got married in June. We're all settled in our home in July. I went through, July, August, just really struggling with like feeling alone, like I didn't have purpose, feeling abandoned by my husband, who's supposed to be this person that's always there for me. And I think, like I said, I just became kind of bitter towards him, where I was like, I don't know why you're always leaving me. And I think I had a really negative outlook on that part of it, because I put this expectation on him that really, when I look at it, it wasn't fair. Like it was a lot to put on him, and it was a lot. But in September, we actually ended up taking in our niece. So his sister had a baby and wasn't able to take care of her. And so at 8 days old, we took our niece in, and then we raised her for like for quite a while, for over a year. We had her with us, and so having her, I felt like I had purpose again, because then I was like this mom to this baby who didn't have a mom in her life anymore. And if we didn't take her, she would have had to go to foster care, and like that sort of thing, where I was just like, I think this is amazing. And I kind of like jumped into it. I was really scared, but I knew I could do it because I have so many nieces and nephews. And like I said, like it was like, I would not, at one point was I scared. I was just like, yeah, we can do it. Like we can raise this little girl. And so we did. We took her in, and I would say that he was definitely home a lot more after we took her in, and like helped with her and stuff. But that was a pretty big thing really early on in our marriage. Like within those first couple months of being married, like we now had a newborn baby in our house with us. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. That's a huge
Yeah.
change. And like you said, it sounds like that really gave you purpose at a time where you were lacking one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Obviously your husband was gone. You didn't have a job at that point.
Mm-hmm.
What was your relationship with Jesus like during that time, Becca? Like you said, it sounds like you almost kind of put your ex-husband maybe a little bit on a pedestal there, of just kind of
Mm-hmm.
expecting him to meet every one of your needs. So I'm curious, what was your relationship with Jesus like throughout that time?
Yeah, I would say it was still really good. I don't remember my faith ever wavering at all during any of this. But it was almost like, now that I had a husband, like I had these expectations that I never had before. you know. But I would say my relationship with Jesus was, um, I would say it was the same. You know, like I journal a lot, and so over the last couple of years and stuff, especially, I've gone back just to look at like old journals and whatnot, and there's a lot of journaling in there, you know, about just like show me what I'm supposed to do, like that type of stuff. And so, I mean, I guess I would say I never strayed from my faith, or my relationship with Jesus during that time.
Praise God. Praise God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about what would have happened if you didn't have that faith, right? If you
Mhm.
didn't have that constant source of companionship with Christ, when you were feeling alone, when you were bitter, sounds like a little bit
Mhm.
depressed too, the fact that you
Yeah.
had that faith was absolutely pivotal, from my
Mhm.
perspective here. And so here we are. You take in your niece, you raise her for, I think you said like the next year,
Mhm.
and just kind of doing life here together, first year of marriage. What's kind of the next chapter of your story, Becca?
We got pregnant like right away. So we got
Okay.
pregnant, and so my niece then that we had, she was 9 months old, um, or she was 8 months old, 11 months old. She was just shy of a year. So she was 11 months old. This is one of those really blonde moments. So
Yeah.
my son was born in August, and her birthday's in September. So they were just under a year apart. So yeah, so then I had two tiny little humans. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had two tiny humans that I took care of, and I was exhausted. Like I did not know what I was doing, you know, like I did it, you know, but like, you know, my ex-husband would get home from work and stuff, and like all the drawers were emptied of all the Tupperware and pots and pans, and you know, my niece is just sitting in the kitchen, you know, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, you know, and it was a wild time. Like it was busy and it was exhausting. And I would say we're just in like full parent mode at that time. I still, like I said, I was a stay-at-home mom and stuff. And then we always had the hopes that our niece's mom or dad would get healthy enough to like have her. Like that was always our hope and prayer, and that was our goal. And so we knew that at some point we would give her back, I guess is how I would say that. And so her dad got sober right away when she was born, actually, like right before she was born, I think, even. Um, and so he's been sober her entire life. And so he eventually became like very consistent in taking her on the weekends and that sort of thing. And we just built a really good relationship with him. We got to know him and stuff. And um, eventually it came down to the point where our niece, like going back and forth seemed to be more of a, like it would take her a couple of days to adjust back to home, you know, after she had been with him and stuff. And like he was doing great, you know, he had a steady job, he had a place to live. And so we started just talking about, okay, do you see yourself like at a place where you want your daughter in your life, like 100%, you know? And at that point it was just him, you know. And so yeah, so long story short, we all agreed that it was the right thing to do, and he took her 100%. And so it was a big piece of our lives that was just like cut out really abruptly. But we knew, like, we felt so much peace about it, like on every side of it, and we knew that it just needed to happen. You know what I mean? As far as like the transition had already been there because she'd been going to see him consistently, you know. And so like it wasn't like for her whole world changed. It was like she was just now going to only live in one world. Um, but that was hard. I mean, like, you know, like having a brand new baby with you, and essentially being her mother for over a year of her life, you know, and just like watching her in that year and stuff, and like how much she grew and learned, and just like the personality and all that stuff, like, and then um, kind of just like handing her to somebody and being like, okay, like here she is, you know, like here you go. That was really tough.
Yeah.
And I think it probably, at the time, it probably affected me way more than I realized. But again, I think I had like a distraction as well because after I had my son in August, I just had this feeling that like I'm supposed to go back to school. And my ex-husband actually, he was like my number one supporter during that time and stuff too. And he's like, yeah, he's like, if you think that's what you should do, like I'm 100% on board. Like, um, you should do it, you know? And so I don't know that I ever actually like um, grieved giving up my niece because I just went right from that to the next thing. So like she went to live with her dad full time in December, and I started school in January. Um, and so it was like a quick thing, and I really don't think that I actually um, like grieved that loss, you know, because it was like it was my she was my life, you know. And I remember, you know, I would kind of tell myself like, well, it's going to be so much easier now because you just have one, so you should enjoy it and just enjoy the time that you did have with her. And not that I would lie to myself or anything, but I think I always tried to like comfort myself in the sense of like not letting my true emotions maybe come out because I was scared of what they actually were, you know. And I knew that our goal was for my niece to like go back to be with her parents or one of the parents, you know, like that was the goal. And we got to that goal. And so in my mind, it's like, how could I be like so sad about this? Or how could I think negatively or like be crushed because of this? Because this is what we were working toward, you know. But it was just that, like, I don't think I ever really gave myself that time to actually process like what actually happened. Like I would walk by her bedroom and it would be empty, you know, or um, I would like find some of her clothes in the laundry still, you know, and like things like that, you know, where it was just like it all became so real eventually. But at the time, I kept convincing myself, like, you're fine. Like, it's going to be easier now because you only have one and you're going to be going to school. So it's going to be easier. And um, I think that was a really big thing that affected me. And I think, again, though, it was like almost unfair for me to like think that my husband was going to like somehow fill that void again, you know, of like being not having her with us and stuff. But then again, too, it was just like, okay, school, like we're gonna go to school, you know. But that was a really big thing, and a really big thing really early on in a fresh marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about the bond and the attachment that you formed with your niece, right? And then, like you said, you knew the goal. I mean, essentially, you guys were pseudo foster parents. You know,
Yeah.
you knew the goal was to get her back to either mom or dad. But like you said, when that moment actually came where you had to give her back to her dad, and it was kind of an abrupt thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I just I guess the word void comes to mind. It's just,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
it would feel like there's a part of my heart that just kind of has a void, that there's something missing
Yeah.
there because again, you bonded with her, you attached to her. I'm sure she did to you as well. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, like in the months after, the years after, were you able to, you know, visit with her or check in with her, or was it a pretty separate thing?
Oh gosh, no. Like, I mean, I could see her every day if I wanted to or had the time. And unfortunately, like, I don't see her hardly at all. And I hate saying it, but it's just like life is so busy and stuff. But no, we are still like a really big part of each other's lives. We talk on the phone and FaceTime a lot. She always does the goofy faces, you know, with the cameras and all that. We go to every birthday party. You know, we see each other for holidays and stuff. She comes to every birthday party for my kids, you know, that sort of thing. And she still like every once in a while will just refer to me like as mom, you know, because I was her mom, you know. And no, we have a good relationship, a really good relationship.
Man, I'm
Mm-hmm.
so glad to hear that. I'm
Yeah,
so glad to hear
yeah.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
then let's not gloss over the fact, like you said, you gave birth to your own child. So you
Mm-hmm.
had the experience first of becoming a stepmom to your ex's son. You then again kind of become a pseudo foster parent to your niece, but now you give birth to your own child, like your own flesh and blood here. And what was that like, Becca, getting pregnant for the first time, you know, living out, you know, the full 9-10 months of pregnancy, giving birth, holding him for the
Mhm.
first time? What was that like, becoming a mom to your own child?
Yeah. I mean, at first I was terrified. Like when I saw that pregnancy test positive, I cried. And I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I can't do this. Like, I'm too young to have a baby. Like, I freaked out hardcore. Like, on the floor crying in the bathroom.
Oh
I did not
no.
want to do it. Like, I was like, we've only been married for 4 months. Like, what? Like, I don't even know how to take care of myself. Like, I was terrified. But then it was like an instant excitement, after that initial like shock, because it was totally unexpected. But then it was excitement for sure. And he was such a good pregnancy. Like it was so good. Like I didn't even know I was pregnant for half the probably 90% of the pregnancy. Like it was good, and it was just it was exciting. It was really good. I think it was really stressful and stuff too. Again, like with my husband or ex-husband and stuff, like with like the drinking and that sort of thing. I remember, getting close to like having my son and stuff, like through this whole thing, like he would still like go to the bars and play pool and all that stuff and not come home and that sort of thing. And I just remember being like, okay, like we're getting really close. Like you can't drink very much tonight because like you're gonna have to take me to the hospital and that sort of thing. It's like we don't know what's gonna happen, so just could you maybe not drink that much tonight? Like I remember having those conversations and they never went well, and I remember actually like being in the hospital, like giving birth, and he had even he put like wine in water bottles and stuff, and so like in the yeah, so like it was always there, like I had just given birth to a brand new baby, and then he was bringing sneaking like alcohol in and stuff, and like I just always like I just when I look back I just always had that. It was just like this just this heavy feeling, of like really like in the hospital, like with a brand new baby, like really, that sort of thing. But overall, I mean, like it when I look back, it's kind of a blur, that whole pregnancy and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have your son, and then shortly after that, it sounds like you decide to go back to school and get your nursing degree.
Yep. Yep. So I had my oldest in August, and then I went back to school in January.
Okay.
So I started
And
up pretty quickly.
and did I don't know much about the medical field. Did you have to go another 4 years, or was that just a 2-year thing to get the degree?
So I started. It was about a year and a half is what it took to finish, just because I had some like prerequisites and stuff done from other colleges and stuff that transferred in. But it was about a year and a half. So I started in January of 2018, and then I graduated in June of 2019. So about a year
Okay.
and a half.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And what was that like to finally, be done with school and get that degree?
Oh, it was awesome. It was so good. Like it was so like nursing school is hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
That's what I
And so
hear.
when yep. So when I passed my classes, it was one thing, and then passing my boards, that was another thing, and then it was like, whoa, I did it, and it's like, oh my gosh, like now I have to get a nursing job, like. So it was
And
it was amazing though, like it was good.
and did you get a nursing job pretty quickly after graduating?
I did, yep, I had a couple months in between, so I passed my boards in July, and then I started working in September. So I applied a lot of different places, but I knew that I wanted to be in the hospital. Like I knew that that was where I wanted to be. I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to do home care. I didn't want to do a clinic. Um, I knew that I wanted to be in the hospital. And so I had applied for And I would say I was pretty aggressive with it. Like I applied for a lot of positions, like, and just coming out of school and stuff, you apply for like new grad positions and whatnot. And so you do a year of like new grad type stuff to like get you into your role since you're brand new. Um, and I just like wasn't hearing back, and stuff like that. And so I remember one day I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna wait anymore because I tried calling and they're not getting back to me. I sent emails, they're not getting back to me. And so I physically like went in and I found the person who was in charge of the new grad stuff. And I like knocked on her door to her office and I was like, I want to work here. Like, what do I need to do? And so yeah, I got a couple interviews and I started in September. So yeah, yep. Yeah, so that was pretty wild. But
Yeah. What was it like going back into the workforce? Plus, not just going back in the workforce, but now being a mom in addition to that and balancing those two roles.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy or anything like that, but I think that nursing school was more time consuming and demanding than the actual like job as a nurse. Just because you'll go to school all day and then you'll come home and then you have to do homework, And so for me, like during nursing school and stuff, like um, my ex wasn't home very often, and so I would, go to nursing school during the day, pick my little one up from daycare, come home, do all the things, feed him, bathe him, put him to bed. And then as soon as he went to bed, that's when I did homework. And that was kind of like, that was just how I did it. Like I didn't, unless my kid was sleeping, I didn't do homework, if that makes sense. So it was like a constant, it was a long year and a half, in that sense. But like, so then going into the nursing role, like actually working as an RN, I would say it was maybe a little bit easier, like right off the bat, in that sense, because I didn't have homework. I didn't have stuff that I, had to do after I left my job. And so I just had more time for my family and stuff once I did start working. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, you can actually just focus on one thing instead of just, school and homework. Those two things in addition to raising your son. You mentioned you got 3 kids. So how long after the first kid was kid number 2 born?
So when I passed my boards, I was pregnant.
Okay.
And I didn't know it. So yeah. Yep. So I started I started working at the hospital knowing that I was about 4 months pregnant at the time. 3 months, I think, maybe. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty quick. There was a little over 2 years in between kids, but yeah.
Sure. So here you are with 2 kids, you're working. What was the marriage like at this point? Obviously we've talked about it before. There was, troubles with his drinking, with him being gone. Here we are a couple of years into the marriage now. At this point in the story, were things getting any better? Were things just kind of coasting along the way they were? Were they getting worse? What did that look like for you, Becca?
Mm-hmm. Oh, they definitely got worse. Like it really only ever got worse. And like I said, I didn't have the right expectations. I didn't understand alcoholism or anything like that. And so I started work in September. I was pregnant. And I just remember there was one day I was still in orientation, and it was about 5 a.m. And I got up, so my 2-year-old is sleeping in bed, he's sound asleep. And I got up to get ready for work and stuff, and my ex, he still wasn't home. And I just, was like, okay, like, hopefully he gets here because I have to go to work and he has to bring the little one to daycare, like that sort of thing. And then he got home at about 5 a.m. And I was furious. Like I was so mad. And I just started, like, I just let him have it. I was like, where were you? What were you doing? You know, like, I can't believe you're gone so long. You're so irresponsible. And I just let him have it, you know, like, I was just so mad. Um, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning. Who knows what he had been doing and stuff, but like, what I was doing was not what I should have should have been doing. You know what I mean? Like, in no way was that going to make anything better. We were not going to have, you know, there was not a productive conversation that was going to come out of that. But I didn't know it. Like, at the time, like, that's all I knew. Like, I didn't know how to fight that battle any other way, you know? And so I just was like, you're so irresponsible. Like, and I was just mad. I had my scrubs on and stuff, you know, like I said, I was getting ready for work. And he said something to me uh, like, why are you so mad anyway? Just like ask me a question just like straight up like that. And in my head, I'm like, what? Like, how could you even ask that question? But I remember I was just like, I was like hot to trot. Like, I was so mad. And we had this big clock hanging on the wall, like above one of our couches. And I looked at the clock and I looked at him, you know, and it's like 5 a.m. And I walked over to the clock and I smashed the clock with my arm. And I thought it was like a Costco clock for like $20. I thought it was plastic. It was glass. And so like now I'm standing there and this clock is just shattered everywhere, like all over the couch, like all over the blanket. And I have shards of glass just like sticking like in my hand and my arm, and it's just like bleeding. And I was immediately like, oh my gosh, like, what just happened? Like, what did I do? And I didn't even know what to do. I just like froze, you know, and I had like blood running down my arm and stuff. And I just, in that moment, I was like, I need help. Like I was just like mortified at what I had just done, you know, and there's, you know, I could talk about this story for 20 minutes or whatever, but like, there were so many little things like that where I just like lost it. You know, like I did not know how to fight the battle of a non-existent husband any other way than by getting angry and yelling and nagging and breaking things. Like, I've broken lamps, I've thrown things, I've hit him, you know, and like just things that I never thought that I would do. And this clock time, like when I hit this clock, that was a really, really big moment in my life. And I had gone one time before, but there's a program called Al-Anon. And it's a program, I'm sure you know about it and stuff, but it's the other side of AA, basically. So like if you have a family member or a loved one who's an alcoholic, then you would go to this other program to learn how to live with them or deal with them, basically, to like live in peace with them, that sort of thing. And that day I went to Al-Anon. I looked for a meeting and I drove like an hour away and found a meeting. And I remember I walked in there and I bought like a roll of gauze or something, and I had my hand was like all bandaged up and stuff. I had to call into work. You know, I called my nurse educator or whatever. It was like, hey, like, I'm not coming in today, like, you know. And it was just like, for me, it was such a low moment that so much good has like actually come out of, in the sense that it made me realize like how like I was really unstable without even realizing it, you know. And then like this anger would just come out seemingly nowhere, which like now I know it's like, okay, it's not normal for someone to get home at 5 a.m. and to tell you that you're, you know, you need mental help when you're standing there bleeding after something that they did, you know what I mean? And it was like, it's been this whole journey of like, that story has been like pivotal in like, I would say, a lot of like my healing and stuff from like the last couple of years and whatnot. But like just me as a person, like understanding that anger that I had and stuff, like I needed to get that under control. You know, like if I I'm getting so upset and stuff at something somebody else is doing, like I'm responsible for my own actions. Like only I can make that decision. Like my ex-husband did not make me walk over to that clock and smash it. That was all me. You know what I mean? And it's because of the way that I was feeling and all this stuff. And so yeah, so like it was bad. It was pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yep.
did going to Al-Anon teach you?
Well, first, so they talk about like the 3 C's, and that's one thing that like is the easiest way to explain it. It's if you're living with an alcoholic or know somebody who's an alcoholic and stuff, the first thing you have to understand is you did not, you can't control it. You didn't cause it, and you can't cure it. And that was a really big thing for me because I would be like, if I was a better wife, like maybe he would want to stay home more, like maybe he wouldn't drink as much, that sort of thing. I would say that I was crazy or like insane during that time. And that's one thing you'll learn in Al-Anon is that um, any story that you hear there, 90% of the people in that room have done it. So like we've all driven around to bars in the middle of the night looking for our husbands, like that sort of thing. Like there's so much comfort in that room because like it's such a alcoholism and stuff is such a worldwide problem, and nobody talks about it openly, like when you're in it and stuff. It's kind of like a hush hush thing. And I thought I was crazy, like, and I felt like I was insane. And so by going to Al-Anon, I realized that it's not my fault, and like when I look back at it, like he had these things way before he even met me, but I owned it, and I let it completely consume me. But really it taught me that like I had a choice in my actions, like I got to decide how I was going to respond to the alcoholic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that program was and is obviously still available for people like
Mm-hmm.
you and people that are listening to this now that they're maybe in your situation where they're living with an alcoholic and they're doing what you are what you did in the past, driving around
Mm-hmm.
and taking on the
Yeah.
blame and thinking, well, if I just do this or just do that, and to have a program like Al-Anon to teach you, like you said, those 3 C's. And I think the big thing that you said there is just to be in a community of people that get it and can
Yes.
validate what you're feeling and to remind you that, no, you're not crazy. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
someone who is just figuring out, what do I do with this?
Right.
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 And
Yep.
again, my background as a therapist, anger's like the side of the iceberg that you see, above the water, above the ocean.
Yep.
What's
Yep.
beneath that
Mm-hmm.
often is hurt, it's
Mm-hmm.
sadness, it's pain. And so as you look back at that, Becca, what
Yeah.
was the hurt? What was the sadness? What was the pain that you were experiencing that resulted in that anger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're 100% right. I didn't see it at the time, but over the years, I've definitely realized that, and like working through it and stuff, like that anger part of it, like I've definitely seen that underlying. For me, it was a lot of hurt. Like I said, I felt so abandoned by him all the time. Like I felt like I didn't, he would say things to me, sometimes like, oh, you're nothing special. Or like he would say stuff like that, just, and I would believe it, and it wasn't necessarily him talking. And this is a tricky part. And this, Al-Anon really helps with this too, is just understanding that like the person and the alcoholism, they are two different things. And it's really hard to like, it's really hard to understand it. And it's not that simple either. You can't just understand it that way. It takes time to actually like understand that concept, but it's a very real thing. And so yeah, I was really hurt. Like I felt abandoned. And for me, like I was always with people. I came from a big family, and then all of a sudden the person who like is supposed to be like my rock and my protector and all the things is not, and he's non-existent, and you know what I mean? And he was not that person that I thought he was. And yeah, it was just a lot of hurt, a lot of And I think that led to a lot of bitterness, like I said earlier and stuff too, and like resentment. I thought that I could control him. Like I would find bottles and stuff around the house, like hidden everywhere all the time, And I remember certain times where it'd be like vodka or something. And I would take the bottle and I'd go to the sink and I'd dump it out and I'd put water in there and I'd go put it back in the same hiding spot. And this is what I mean. Like I was like crazy in the sense that I was like, this will teach him. Like now he won't do this again. Or, you know what I mean? And looking at it now, it's just, I see how silly and petty that was. But like I said, I did not know how to fight that battle at that time. And that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so again, Al-Anon, was teaching you how to fight that battle. And
Yes.
so how did that translate into the home life, right? Because it's one thing to learn these skills, these behaviors, these patterns that Al-Anon is teaching you, but it's another thing to apply it, let alone apply it in an active situation of alcoholism, right? So like, what did that look like for you? Like what changed for you living with your ex as he was still battling alcoholism?
Nothing right away. I think that like Al-Anon was such a new concept to me, that all I could see early on, even when I went to meetings and stuff, was that my husband was, making a choice to drink. And by making that choice, he was choosing to like leave his family, kind of, if that makes sense. And like all I could see was like the choice part of it. And so I remember like kind of going from like just an angry, like, why are you doing this, to like, you could stop this. And I think I kind of went from this over here, into this stage where I was like, you're making this choice. If you wanted to, you could just stop drinking. And I sat in that phase, I think, for a couple of years, probably like maybe a good year at least, maybe not two, but like it was a long time that I really struggled with the choice part of what he was doing, and I think I sat there for quite a while where it's like, if you really loved us, like you wouldn't choose that. Like if you really wanted to, you could get sober. If you said you weren't going to drink again and you're drinking right now, and like almost like all I could see was him just choosing to keep drinking, and that's all I saw. And then again, it was just that the bitterness and like the anger and stuff that would just like creep back in, and like it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is all going on in your home life. Like you said, alcoholism, it's something that we all know exists and it's a common thing, but I like what you said there earlier about it's such a hush hush thing when you're like in it. Right. And I think what I see a lot of the time is that the person in the marriage that isn't struggling with alcoholism, they almost feel this pressure to like kind of like cover for their spouse, like in public, and to put on this facade and like what smile, everything's going good, social media, everything's going good, we're a happy family.
Yeah.
What was that like for you, Becca? I mean, did you feel like you had to either protect him, his image, or the family's image, even though life at home told a whole different story?
Definitely. Yep. I would say that that's exactly how it was. I didn't want my family to know. I didn't tell them. I didn't tell his family. There were different times like where I would, but it was always led by him for the most part early on. Eventually it wasn't. Eventually I was just like, this is what's happening, and I didn't hide it, but it took a while. Because you don't want people to think negatively of the person that you married. I didn't want my family to worry. And so yeah, I definitely hid it for a while, and I even remember like times in nursing school and stuff where like there was one point where in the middle of the night, I took my little boy, and we left and we didn't tell anyone where we were going, and we went and we stayed at a hotel, because it was just not good. And I remember like during nursing school and stuff too, like I wouldn't want to tell anybody, but it was like, hey, I really need help with this. Like, I don't have my laptop. I can't do this assignment. Or, like there were just times where like it had to kind of come out, but if it didn't have to be told, then I didn't tell it, like everything was fine. We're good, or I wouldn't say anything. It's really true too, where like when you're in a relationship like that, you just kind of naturally isolate, where it's like, well, I'm not going to go to that event because it's not going to turn out well. It's more work to go. I'm just going to stay home and not deal with it. And so like I personally just like I wouldn't hang out with friends very often. I wouldn't see my family very often because I didn't want to talk about anything. I didn't want them to ask questions. So a lot of like self-isolation and stuff that goes with that too. And I'm sure you've seen that, in relationships like that where like not that they are trying to hide it, but it's so much easier to keep it hidden than it is to like actually reach out and ask for help, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And, Becca, you said that things just progressively got worse. Things never really got better in that marriage and with the alcoholism. What was the rock bottom point? Or maybe there were multiple, because sometimes that's the case too. But like looking back at it, like, was there like a moment where you just knew like, I can't do this anymore?
I would say there were a lot of moments like that. I read a lot of things and whatnot, and there's like a statistic that actually proves or shows that it takes someone to leave an abusive relationship on average 7 times. So they'll leave and go back and leave and go back. And I think when I counted, I was at 6, like before I actually, and they were like leaving. Like I had my own apartment, I lived with family, like leaving, So yeah, and the first time I left was in 2019. So it was when I was pregnant with my second. So I only had the one. It was right after the clock incident. It was like a couple weeks after that, I think. That was the first time I left. And then I went back, and then I left again and got my own apartment. And then I went back like a week before I had my second son, and then left about a month after he was born. And then I went and I lived with my parents. And so, like, when I look back at it, there was one moment where I knew that I could walk away, but it's almost like unfair to tell about that moment without like telling about all the other times before it, only because I think, and I would like, one thing that's really important to me is that I never try to justify my divorce, because I know that God hates divorce. I hate divorce. Like I never wanted my marriage to end. It breaks my heart when I hear friends and family and everybody else, that is getting a divorce and stuff. Like I hate divorce, but I made that choice, And so one thing that I am very aware of is just making sure that I in no way try to justify my decision to get divorced. But like I said, the moment that I knew that I could walk away was only because of all the years prior and all the other times of leaving and going back and leaving and going back. So I would say there were a lot of rock bottoms. But yes, there was one moment, and that was the last time I left and never went back. Yeah.
So Becca, what was that point then? Like you said, 6 times, or I guess 5 times at that point, you had left and come back. Occurrence number 6, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for you. What happened where you just knew that I am done, I'm not coming back?
Yeah. So it was April 9th of 2022. So a year and a half ago, little over, whatever that is. Math's not my strong point, remember. So April 9th of 2022. Um, it was a really bad day at home and stuff. And so the months prior and stuff, like, like the safety part of like the relationship in the home and stuff was just really high. Like it was not safe. It was a really toxic environment. There was just constant yelling and screaming. I would say that I had gotten to a place where like I didn't yell anymore. I didn't scream at him anymore. Like God had completely transformed my heart. Like during those times of leaving prior and coming back, like I had a friend who would talk to me about how like, Becca, your heart's like, it's like a rock. It's really hard and you need to get it pliable. You need to get it soft, and just like God mold you. And I remembered 2 years before I left for good, I remember like getting to a point where I was like, okay, God, like you can have it all. Like you can have my heart, like you can do whatever. And I just remember like I felt like this physical softening of my heart during that time, 2 years prior. And so the next 2 years then were just really me focusing on my marriage and really doing everything that I possibly could to save my marriage. I can say in complete honesty that I did everything that I could to save my marriage, up to the point of even quitting my job. And then he wouldn't give us money for diapers or anything like that, to the point of like just like being like, okay, God, you got it. Like I trust you. Like I want to save my marriage. I want to save my marriage. I want to save my marriage. He wants me to quit my job, so I'm going to quit my job. Like literally, like I did everything possible that I knew how to do, and I was like in constant prayer all the time, like God, keep us safe, that sort of thing. So the day that we left, he is a chronic alcoholic, and then he also would abuse like Adderall and stuff, which is synthetic meth. And so he would like open the capsules and, all that stuff, whatever. Anyway, he had got to this point where he was so paranoid and schizophrenic and stuff that like every picture frame in our house was ripped off the wall and the back was tore off of it. Our fireplace was taken apart. He would like count the studs in the drywall in the garage and stuff, and then take off like the panels in the garage, and just like anything crazy that you can think of, like that's what was happening in our home with 3 tiny kids. So like all those things just kind of built up, and like around that time it was just extra bad. Any car that drove by was watching us, like that sort of thing. We lived out in the country, like the cops knew us on a first name basis. My kids just, even today, like when they see cops, they just think that they're there to give them stickers, because they would just bring stickers for the kids, and like our house was flagged in the sense that like it was like a dangerous house to like respond to. So they would always have to have like multiple squad cars respond to our house, that sort of thing. So like the safety level in the aspect was really high. And I would say that I lived in that unsafe environment from about, for sure, like January till April, where my family was like, you're going to die. Like you and the kids like will die. Like you're going to be on the news. Like, and it was that bad, just the level of like paranoia and all that stuff. And just like alcoholism and drug abuse and stuff can just steal some of the most beautiful people and get to them to a point where they're just unrecognizable, and it's not them. But at the same time, like it's not acceptable, and you shouldn't stay just because like, well, I married this person, like I honestly believe that my kids and I would be dead if we had stayed in that house longer than we did. So anyway, so that morning, like I said, there's just a lot that leads up to it. It's not like this little light bulb just turned on and I was like, okay, let's pack a bag and go. Like, it's not like that. Like, there's so many different elements that played into this day. And so it was like right off the bat, like right away in the morning, he was like, you need to get out. You need to leave. You take the kids, go. I don't ever want to see you again. Like, like you can't come back here till like you're changed and all this, like it was just everything was always my fault, and it was a constant, you need to leave, I don't want you here, that sort of thing. And for the months prior and stuff, like I said, my family was like, you need to get out. Like, why are you staying? Are you waiting for something bad to happen? Because it will, like it only ever got worse, And like I said, I had quit my job. And so it was me with the 3 kids at home, just in this toxic environment all the time that was just filled with like screaming, and it was horrible. And so that morning, like, I had been like praying and stuff, and I told one of my sisters specifically the months prior, I was just like, I don't feel it's not time. Like, I'm not supposed to go yet. Like, I know that. Like, I'm not supposed to go. It's not time for me to leave. Like, I still believe God's gonna save this marriage. I still have hope for this marriage. Like, it's not time to go. And I just never felt peace about actually walking away from my marriage, because I knew that if I walked away again, I would never go back. And I knew that because of all the times that I had left and gone back before. And so I knew that if I walked away, I was never going back. And I would say I was like so close to God at that time that I knew it. I was like, I don't have this peace. Like, I'm not supposed to leave yet. So on April 9th, I was standing in my kitchen. I was standing at the island, and he was just in one of his fits or whatever. And he was just like yelling and screaming and telling me to leave. And it was like this audible voice. And I just heard God say, like, you can go now. Like, you're released from this marriage. Like, you can go. Like, you've done everything you can. And I'll never forget it. Like, I can't explain it, but I heard God say, you're released. You can go. And like I said, like for months prior, like my family was like begging me to get out. They were begging me to leave. Some of his family was begging me to leave, like, and I just never, ever felt that peace from God, ever. And literally on April 9th of 2022, I heard God so clearly just say, you're released. And I left. I didn't have a car at that time. I had no way to leave because he had been in like this state of mind where he was so schizo and stuff that he had actually taken my vehicle apart, and he had like pulled every single wire apart from like underneath the hood of the car. And he said that the computers in the car were watching his cameras in the garage, and so just in such like a really bad mental place, that I literally had no way to get out. I had no way to go. And I had 3 little kids with me. And so I called my parents from down by Rochester because they were the first ones that came to mind. And I was like, I need to call them. And they immediately got in their vehicle, and they were at my house in less than 3 hours. And they got me and the kids, and I just packed a bag, and we left. And that was it, and we never went back.
Wow. Man, I just think of the love of God there, right? Like he saw you, Becca. He saw every effort you were making to save that marriage, and how badly you wanted it to work, and for him to so clearly speak to you and say, I release you from this, which in my mind can help take away shame, guilt, all those feelings. I'm sure you still wrestled with those, afterwards maybe, but just to get kind of that very clean release from the Lord to know that it's okay for you to leave. Like, I just think of how good of a father we have. And speaking of fathers, I mean, you said your dad, your mom, boom, right away got in the car, 3 hours.
Instantly.
You guys pack up a bag, you leave, you never came back. What did the following days, weeks look like, Becca? I mean, on one hand, a very healthy thing to get out of there, right? But on the other hand, the reality is that, your life is kind of in shambles now because you don't have a car, you don't have a house anymore, you weren't working, so there's no income. Like there's a lot going on there, right? And so what
Yeah.
did that look like in kind of those days following?
It was a lot of I wouldn't even say the word fear, because it was crazy, like the peace that just completely overwhelmed me, I would say, by leaving. Like, oh my gosh, like it was so hard, it was so stressful. Like half the days I probably just walked around like a zombie, like not knowing what to do, not knowing what I was gonna do. And it was just one of those things where I was like, I just gotta keep my kids alive. Like I have these 3 little kids that are depending on me. I'm all they have right now, you know? And I think back to that too, in the sense that I left, you know, I took them from their home and we all left. You know, they were no longer sleeping in their rooms, in their beds. You know, we packed a bag and that was it. You know, we didn't have all their toys or their books or anything like that. So yeah, so I stayed with my parents for a while. My car ended up getting fixed, and then I didn't have any money, so my parents gave me some money or whatever, and then I was able to. Before that, I pulled my 401k because I had no money and my ex wouldn't give me any money. So I pulled my 401k, and then that's what my kids and I lived off of from April till I went back to work in June then. And so that's how we survived. But yeah, it was, I would say when I left too, in some way, I still had hope that God could save this marriage. You know, like I felt that release from him, and I left, and I knew I wasn't going to go back. But in some way, it was like, you know what? Like he can do the impossible. Like he could still do something. I didn't have any shame or anything like that because I knew that I had done absolutely everything that a human could do. You know, and so I knew, I was like, if it's going to happen, it's up to God. There is no way that there is no way that I will be able to do this. And so I still had, like, in my mind, like I hadn't filed for divorce or anything like that, but I knew that I had left that marriage, if that makes sense. Like that marriage was no longer mine, even though I hadn't filed for divorce. It was like I completely walked away from my marriage and was like if I, you know, like if this was a marriage, it was like, okay, here you go, God, and I just tossed it. But I didn't file for divorce. You know what I mean? Like, and so I didn't have any of that shame, or like my first thought was like, I need to go to the courthouse, or I need to get on a computer and print these divorce papers. Like that was not my thought. My thought was like, I need to get back on my feet. I need to get a stable place for the kids. And it was just like all forward motion with that. So then we hopped around quite a bit. And it's pretty crazy to think back, like, to all the different places we've stayed and the people that gave us those places to stay and stuff too, you know, and like just welcomed us into their home. So we went from my parents to one of my really good friends. We went to her house and stayed with her family for about a month. And then we moved into a cabin at Riverside Resort. So Riverside Resort is just, in my mind, that will just always be a place of healing. Like there was so much healing that happened at that place. And it was just like saturated with Jesus. You know, like if you know the people that own that place, like, you know that resort just speaks Jesus. Like, and so it was just like going to that place, it was like an instant, like, God's got you. Every single time we moved or went somewhere, God's got you. You know, people would tell me things like how it's like we see you walk into church with your kids and stuff, and it's just, there's just like this shield around you. There's just this, it's like a visible shield like around you and your kids, and it's just like the coolest thing ever to watch you just walk through those doors with those 3 little tiny kids, you know. And it's like God, it's like so obvious. We just look at you and like God's got you. And a lot of the times when they would say that, I didn't really feel it because I was in like hardcore survival mode. I was like, we were living off of food stamps. I had a vehicle that I could not make payments on or like keep making them. You know, there were so many things that were just like these stressors and stuff. And I would just be like, you know what? Okay, like God's got it. He's got it. He's gonna have to because I can't do this. And so yeah, it was a lot of hopping around like that, going from place to place. But God was always there, and that was the one thing that I always reminded myself. Like, I had heard a sermon a long time ago about like you have to praise God when you're in the pit and when you're in the palace. And I felt like I was in a pit. I felt like I was in the desert, like wandering around, like, God, what am I supposed to do here? But I knew that he was still worthy of my praise, no matter where we were. Like, I knew that. And I like clung to that. And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but you are still good. And I would journal this and I would write it out. And like, I believe that so strongly, where it was like, you're still good. Like, even if these circumstances suck right now, like, you are still good. You are still worthy of praise. And I look back and the people that were like surrounding us and stuff they were constantly speaking life into me and into my kids. And they were loving my kids so much extra, And like, when I look back, it's like, I didn't have all that much love to give them. Like, I gave them everything I had. But like the people that were around us, like our village was just incredible. Like I would have babysitters that they wouldn't just come watch my kids, like they would bring groceries with them and they would like stock my fridge. They literally like clothed my kids for like a solid year. Like I didn't have to buy clothes for my kids, they would refuse payment. I would try to pay them and they would just like Venmo it back to me and just keep Venmo, like, or they would just refuse, like, I'm not taking that. Like, you cannot give that to me. Like, just like blessing after blessing after blessing, And like I said, I felt like we were in this pit, but it was like God was just like right there next to us. And it was like he was so good the whole time. Like there were there were just so many moments, where it was like I have a lot I could complain about, but I'm not going to because God is so good, and I can like be honest when I say that was really my mentality. And that's what I mean though, where like that day that I left, all the years before that led up to that moment. And the only reason that I could stay positive during this really tough time, after leaving and stuff, was because of all the things that I learned during my marriage, And it was just amazing to see. Like, I feel like it, like when you work out and you work out for years and years and you build these muscles and stuff. And I felt like that's what had happened, is that like these faith muscles had grown so much through all of that crap that I went through, that like now when I was being tested, it was like, oh, like this is amazing. Like, I don't even understand like this peace that's happening right now, because like I should be freaking out right now because I have no money. And I literally like crunched up like Fruit Loops and put them on toast today because I had nothing else to give my kids. Like there were days like that where it was just like, nope, God is still good. God is still good. And I look back at it and it's amazing, to see. And like I said, I am not going to lie to you when I say it was hard and it was stressful and I could not wait till my kids were in bed. Like, but like God was still good. He was still good. So yeah.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel the spirit just like in me as you're talking there, Becca, just bragging on the goodness of our God right there. And when we had met last week briefly there, you told me about how God came through financially, about how,
Oh
just your budget. So I talk to the people about that, just how God
yeah.
always provided, with the budget.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, it was insane. It was crazy. I think too though, just to like so the foundation, like I talked about, like when I was little, like if we did a chore and got an allowance or something, our parents taught us to tithe. So if we got $1 for like doing a chore, we would give 10, like we would literally go to church with a dime and we would give that dime for tithing. And so like early on, when I was too little to even understand what was happening, like my parents instilled tithing. And that is one thing that like when I had all my own paychecks, 10% of every single check would go to tithing. And so the very first paycheck that I got, like when I went back to work, the first place that money went was to tithe at church. I would give 10% no matter what. And like I said, we were living on food stamps. It's amazing to look at how we actually made it through all of that, but that's just it. And that's another thing where it's like, God is just that good. So the first place we lived, somebody paid, it was actually my ex-mother-in-law. So she actually paid the first month's rent, for when we, went to Riverside. And that was just such a blessing. I don't even know if she realizes the financial state that I was in. I'm sure she did, because she knew everything, but she paid the whole first month's rent. And I just remember this weight was just instantly lifted. And it was the very first place that we had moved that wasn't family, in a home with our families, and I just remember it was God's got you, and I just kept hearing that, God's got you, God's got you. But I was so convicted. Every paycheck, 10%, I would give to church. The ways that God showed up financially, I could tell you story after story. But we never once needed. We never needed. I remember one time, it was in the fall. So over a year ago now, I remember one time I pulled into the grocery store and I had no money on my EBT card. It had just stopped. And still to this day, I don't even know why. And I never looked into it further. Anyway, so I had no money and it had just stopped. And I think it's because I went back to work and I had enough income now that they just cut it off. It had to be that. We're going to go with that. So I remember I pulled in the grocery store and I knew I needed groceries. And I knew I had no money on my EBT card. And I did not have hardly any money. I was I can get milk and bread. And I was the bare minimum. And I was I think I can get this, and I was if I just buy a loaf of bread, I can make toast. I could, and I was thinking of all the different things that I could do with a loaf of bread, But my kids, especially the little one, she had to have milk, because she wasn't eating full meals or whatever, but she wasn't on formula anymore, that sort of thing. Anyway, so I pulled in a grocery store and I just prayed and I was okay, God. And I was you know what? I'm just going to check my EBT card. I'm just going to call and see. And I remember it was actually Emily Conrad again. I had been talking to her that day about something. Anyway, so I just said this prayer or whatever, and then I had this idea, and I hadn't checked the card for months, literally. I was I'm just going to check. And there was over $600 on this EBT card, and I just started crying, and I was what? And it was just another reminder of, it was just I have you, I have you, just like that, just so vivid, so tangible, and I went in and it was just one of those things where I was I can get my kids things that they wouldn't normally get. I was so excited, to give my kids something special, There was another time, actually, it was, was it just this past March? So at church, they do baby dedication, and my youngest one had not, all three of my kids have been dedicated at River of Life, but my youngest one hadn't, and I had always hoped that my ex and I would have worked out, and so I always put it off, And I just remember that month, that they were going to do it, I just heard from God, it was you need to do it, it's time, you need to dedicate her. And I was just okay, fine. And I was just not embarrassed, but I have never seen a single parent on that stage dedicate a baby alone, and I just remember that was a fear that I had, where it was I'm gonna be up there all alone, people are gonna judge me, I don't know if I should be doing this, and I had this fear for so long, and finally I was nope, I'm gonna do it. And it was just that word obedience, and it was I just need to be obedient. I want my daughter dedicated. She's over a year old now. It's just me. I'm going to do this. And I just felt this, I needed to be obedient. And I remember the day before the dedication, so on Saturday, I was doing my budget for the month and I was so short. Like I was doing it, I was like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Like I already know I don't have enough money. And I was $580 short for the month. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't have this money. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just remember I closed my book, like my notebook or whatever. And I was just like, okay, God, like, I'm really excited to see how you do this one, like just in like a genuine way, because it was like, we have never once needed, this has been almost a year of us like being gone, having left everything, it was in March and we had left that April. So almost a year. And then, like I said, never once did we need anything. And so I was $580 short. And I was just like, okay, whatever. But I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go get Riley dedicated tomorrow, And so I remember standing on that stage and feeling so singled out, because it was just me and my little girl on my hip, and in the front row were some friends that were sitting there, and my little girl just started like waving at them, because she knew them and stuff, and they were waving at her, and it was like just like instantly I felt like I just felt so loved, because like I was like so nervous to get up there, and I was like, people are gonna be judging me, and then instantly it was just like love, you know what I mean, like just like total acceptance, and it melted my heart, because I had this fear of just like these people judging me and stuff. And then we're in church, you know what I mean? And I know like our church is amazing, but it's just that human nature, where it's like, I don't think anybody has ever dedicated a baby, like just one parent, that sort of thing at that church. And I just remember like afterwards, I was just like, this is so good. Like, I'm so glad I did this. Like, my little girl deserves this, whatever. So we went home. And there was an envelope taped to the door, and there was a card in there, and it said, like, congrats on Riley's dedication, or thinking of you on Riley's dedication day, and all this stuff. And so I knew it was someone from church, but it wasn't signed. It was totally anonymous, and there was a $100 bill inside. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is really cool. Like, that's amazing, And then later that day, we had some friends stop by, and the dad, he handed me $500 in cash. And he was like, I've been praying about this for a long time. God's been telling me that I need to give this to you. And I knew today was the day. Like, but he's like, but I'm not kidding. Like, it's just been like months that he's been telling me I need to give you this amount of money. And he literally handed me $500. And I remember that night, I was just like so overwhelmed. And I have a picture of it on my phone even. Like, I have a picture of my budget, and then I have a picture of this like $600 in cash. And I had $20 extra, in less than a 24-hour period of just being like, okay, God, I don't know what you're going to do. And it's just amazing to me to see how, like, he cares about us so, like, not just me, but like everybody. He cares about us so much, that he will not leave us needing, and like, I don't know what I did with the extra 20, but like, it was just one of those things where it was like, he over provided, in that moment even. But there are so many stories, like a different time when we moved back to Riverside again, the owner texted me and she's like, hey, like, welcome back, let me know if you need anything. And by the way, somebody called and paid your first month's rent. And just like that, like, I was like, nobody even knew we were moving. There were 2 people that knew we were moving. Like what? Like, I don't understand this. And then I remember at Christmas time last year, I had no idea how I was going to buy gifts and stuff for my kids, but again, it was like, that's not really what's important. Like, and so like, I had gotten the mail and there was $1,000 check in there. From church, and it was just one of those things, like, I opened it and I don't cry a lot, but like, I just cried. And it was just another reminder of like how good God is. And like, it's not like we were just getting handed all this money and stuff, but it was almost like, like I talked about like the faith muscle and stuff, and how I knew, and still to this day, like 10% of my money, the first place it's going, the first place that's budgeted is to tithe at church, and then when I look at it and stuff, like church, it is the people. The people in that church have like completely surrounded my kids and I, and never once were we left needing anything. And it is just like, I've had so many people tell me, like God has a shield around you and your kids. Like he loves you guys so much. And I just have felt it from day one. But yeah, the financial part of it, like even when I went back to work, I was doing like a day-night rotation before I quit. And when I went back, they offered me a straight day position, which like there's no way I could have done nights. I got a way better position. I got $1.50 raise, like just going back to work. And so it was just one of those things where it was like constantly God was just like, I got you, I got you, I got you. And it just in ways that you can't explain. And it's amazing.
It is so faith building hearing you talk about all this, Becca. Like you said, like God loves each and every one of us so much. He's not going to let us go, without meeting our needs. Whatever we need, like he will be faithful to provide as long as we're just obedient to whatever it is that he's calling us to do. Right. I mean,
right.
You didn't want to get up on that stage and be the only single parent dedicating their child, but you did. And, shortly after that, you're no longer $600 short for the month, right?
Right.
Like you,
right.
you put your faith into action and you were obedient. And like you said, Becca, you got testimony after testimony after testimony of how God has come through. And I've told you this before. I really believe there's a book in you. I really believe you're going to write a book someday where everything's going to be in there. But I think we got to talk about the house, because when you were telling me about that, like I couldn't, I hate to say it, but like I couldn't believe it, right? Like it was just amazing how God has provided. So tell us about how you and your kids were able to get into the house that you guys are currently in. Yeah,
for sure. So moving around so many times and stuff, like I just kept praying, like that God would just bring us to the next right place. And I just always heard, like, be still, be still. And I'm not kidding you when I would say like there would be less than 48 hours that I would need to be out of a place, and I had no clue where we were going to go next, multiple times. And I had this peace, and people just thought I was nuts. Like they were like, what are you doing? Like you have 3 little kids. Like how are you not freaking out right now? And I just kept hearing God like, be still, all the time. And it, like I said, it was that supernatural peace that just like completely overtook me. And it was like, God's got it. I know he does. And every time he did. And it was just perfect. And it was right where we were supposed to be. And like I said, we just had a village that completely surrounded us. So when I left my husband, we owned a house together, and it was on a contract for deed. And so, long story short, he ended up losing the house, but he wouldn't leave. And so he had to be evicted. But to be evicted, like it had to go in like this like foreclosure, like state or whatever. And with a foreclosure, your credit basically goes to crap for like 7 years, right? You can't do anything. And so so in my head, I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to be renting for the next 7 years, and I was just trying to figure out like, how could we do this? Like maybe I could find someone that could buy a house for us and then we'll just pay them each month. You know what I mean? Like I was just trying to figure out like, how am I going to do this? Because I'm not going to have any credit, and like I said, like how God provided financially, I never missed a payment. Like that's a whole other side of it and stuff too. But like I never missed a payment. Like my credit was like as good as it could have gotten, and not everybody, but I had multiple people that were like, you should just file for bankruptcy, just start over, just start fresh, just file for bankruptcy. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, and I just knew I couldn't, but with the house going into foreclosure and stuff, I was like, this is really tricky. Like, I'm not going to be able, like my credit's going to be shot for 7 years, like I'm not going to be able to do it. I could never get approved for a mortgage with that. So then I just kind of kept waiting, for it to take a hit, my credit, and I would just kind of check it every once in a while, and it just never went down, and it never showed up anywhere on my credit. And so I started, like, I called the old owners of the house and I asked them, like, hey, like what's going on with the house? And they're like, oh, well, no, it's already with new owners and everything, like everything's completely done, And I was just so confused. And I was like, well, my credit's still really good. Like, I don't understand this, And they're like, well, yeah, that's really weird, And I had to call like 5 different places just to try to get this figured out. And everybody was like, nope, we don't have any record of a foreclosure. Like, nope, your name's not anywhere, like nothing. Like, so like, it was just crazy because I was like, this does not make any sense. Like, he lost the house, like it went back to the owners and it's already sold to new people. Like, how is this like, and there's no record of a foreclosure anywhere, So I was just like, this is so confusing. Long story short, though, because the house was on a contract for deed and never went through a bank, it never went into like a technical foreclosure where it would hit your credit, but they had to go the foreclosure route just to like get him evicted from the house, if that makes sense. So it was a really long story, like how that all went and stuff. So anyway, so I found this out in April of this year. So this past spring, I found that out and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I was like, I could start looking for a house, and I was just jacked, And I had called one of my really good friends. So she's my ex-sister-in-law, but she's my best friend. So I called my best friend, and we were talking or whatever, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, you're never gonna believe this, like, my credit's still, like, I could buy a house. And she's like, no way, like, so and so wants to sell their house. And I was just like, well, that's pretty crazy. Anyway, though, so like, prior to that, I was in a life group at church, and I was telling somebody that I just was really praying for a specific place that my kids and I could like rent, right? But I told them how I was like, but I just don't even feel like I can pray for this because it's something like so big, and I don't really feel like I'm deserving of it for where I'm at in life. And I had this really good friend, and she said, she was like, no, you need to pray a bold prayer. Like, you need to pray for exactly what you want. You need to go home, you need to write it out, and be specific. Like, God wants you to be specific. Like, he wants to bless you, And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. So I went home and I wrote it out, So then, long story short, when I was talking to my friend, and she was like, oh, so-and-so wants to sell their house, but it's not listed. Like, you guys could probably do it without realtors and everything. And she started telling me about this house, and it was everything on my list. Literally everything on my list. And I was just like blown away. I was like, there's no way. Like, there's just no way. Like, this is way too good to be true. So long story short, I was approved for a mortgage within the next 24 hours for the exact amount that this house, that they were going to sell it to me for. And these people that sold me the house then are just the sweetest people. And they just, like, really, when I look at it and stuff, like, they have blessed me in a way that, like, I'll never be able to, like, repay them for. Like, they provided a home for me that worked. You know what I mean? Like, I was able to get into it with my kids and stuff, and they were just the biggest blessing and just this huge part of my story in the sense of, like, trusting God, but it was just a reminder that, like, God sees you and he wants to bless you and he wants to give you the desires of your heart, And I have a good friend, Emily Conrad again, who she always told me, she's like, Becca, you better be careful, like, what you pray for, because, like, he answers your prayers really fast. Like, and it was just like, just this reminder of how good God is and how he sees me, and she would always tell me that. She's like, he sees you, Becca, he sees you, And this house, though, it was just like, literally, like, I still have the piece of paper that I have everything written on, and it's just at the top, it says home with like a little heart, and then it has everything that I prayed for, everything. And it's just amazing to me, just the love that God has for us to be able to just like he just answered every prayer in that sense. And so yeah, my kids and I, we set up our Christmas tree last night. And it is so good. Like we have a home. Like they have their bedrooms and like we go home every day.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh my
amazing.
gosh, Becca.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that. Like for anyone listening, if you need evidence that we serve a good God,
Mm-hmm.
Becca is proof of it right here. And just the
Yes.
blessings that he has poured out on you and on your kids. And
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, Becca, like this has been incredible hearing about how God has constantly been with you through everything. That's part of it, right? But the other part that really impresses me is your faith in God through everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you said it earlier, like
Yeah.
your faith never wavered. It's one
Mm-hmm.
thing for us to say that we have faith, to say that we follow Jesus. It's another thing to actually live it out and walk that out, right? And
Yeah.
whew, you have been through hell and
Mm-hmm.
you have come out on the other side because you have not forsaken Jesus. You have not
Right.
given up on him, and he has continued to come through for you each and every time. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the theme of this episode, is just the goodness of God. And that's, fitting, because that's usually the last question I ask people on the show is, when you look back at everything that we just talked about, Becca, which was a lot,
Mm-hmm. It was a lot.
and you think
Yeah.
and you think about the goodness of God through it all, what stands out to you?
Just that he never left me ever. I had a friend a couple weeks ago ask me how, or she made a comment about, I'm sure there was a time, when you were going through some of those really tough years and stuff that you just really felt like God had like abandoned you. And nobody had ever asked me that question until just a couple weeks ago. And immediately I was like, no, there wasn't. I never felt like God left me, ever. I knew that no matter where we were, he was right there with us. Like I knew that no matter how bad the day was, he was right there. And never once did I feel alone in that way. Never. And still to this day, like I know there's going to be challenges and stuff that come ahead. Like I believe that. So I used to pray all the time, and I would listen to the song by Blessing Olford, the Brighter Days song, and I used to listen to that all the time. And I would just pray like, okay, someday, like it's going to be the brighter days. And I 100% believe that my kids and I are living in the brighter days today. I know that, like, it's like God has brought us to this really sweet place in life, and we went through a lot to get here. But I think it's one of those things where I know that it's not just going to be like this. I know that we're going to get hit somehow, with something. But to sit here and tell you that I never once felt like God left me, and that I only ever felt his presence even more during those dark days, like to me, I guess that's what I want people to hear, I guess, is that like no matter what you're going through, he is right there with you. And he will not bring you to something if he can't bring you through it. And it's just for me, like I have a million stories. Like we could talk for a couple more hours, but you know what I mean? And it's just like he is so good and he cares about the smallest details and he wants to bless you and he sees you where you're at. And if we draw close to him, like we cannot mistake his leading.
Amen. So beautifully said, Becca. So I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. And I'm inspired by your faith, Becca. I really am. And I thank you for being so candid and vulnerable with us to give God the glory of everything that he's done in
Mm-hmm.
you. And you talked about obedience, and I'm glad I was obedient when I felt the Holy Spirit, just, when I saw you pop up on
Yeah.
Facebook, to just reach out to her.
Yep.
'Cause man, like just kind of building a friendship with you. And me and my wife being able to pray for you and your kids over this last week has been such or not this last week, but over this last year has been such an honor and a privilege to just lift you guys up and to just see how God, like we talked about, just continues to come through for you each and every time. And so, so thankful God crossed our paths, and so thankful for this time, Becca. This was an honor. So thank you. And man, I'm looking forward to seeing what God continues to do in and through you and your kiddos, because your story is definitely far from over.
Yeah. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, this has been amazing, and it's been really good.